Crazy Stupid Podcast.
Thank you all so much for tuning in. We'd love for you to hit that subscribe button and the bell so that you are aware of when we post new content, because as always, we are the most important thing in your life.
So we just watched Secret Invasion Episode 3, so we're going to talk about that. And then we're also going to continue our rewatch of Andor. Today we're talking about Episodes 3 and 4. Where do we want to start? Secret Invasion or Andor?
Like, we can just jump right into Secret Invasion. I'm just going to go ahead and say it. Emilia Clarke's character is alive.
Oh, 100%. It's like he shot her in the shoulder
Gaia?
or something. Yeah, It's like not it.
Gaia's alive.
When she went down, I was like, no, Emilia, you don't pay for Daenerys to be in your show for 3 episodes.
I think she used the Super Scroll stuff.
Oh.
Because I don't think they show us how Gravik can heal without that being a foreshadow of something later on, in my opinion.
Yeah, that makes sense, because that's what that was. Okay. Honestly, when that happened in the museum, I think I just thought, I was like, oh, so that's a scroll thing.
No, but you remember?
That's not a scroll.
Do you remember? Was it episode? I think it was episode 2 where they showed a bunch of different characters. They showed the what we thought was the Mandarin in Iron Man 3. You know, when they would heat up and they would just keep regenerating. They showed, I think, some of the beings from Thor Dark World.
In episode 2, they showed this in what context?
When Gaia was on the computer searching things up, and you saw DNA of different beings. They're using that DNA to create the Super Scroll serum or whatever.
Well, no, they are using it to create a super serum that's not for Skrulls. And the Skrulls are going to infiltrate the Navy and use it for themselves.
Yes. That's what I mean. Yeah. Okay. The Skrulls are using that for themselves, is what I mean.
I just want to say the U.S. government, you guys didn't learn from the first time you guys did the super soldier thing. I just feel like we should have wrapped that up.
Enough. Enough.
I can't believe we're coming back for round 2. That's crazy.
It's like they cannot help themselves. Same thing with vibranium. Just enough.
Let it go. Oh my gosh. Let it go. Yeah. When will we learn? Never. That's the answer.
I also think they're showing that the new recruit Beto a lot.
They're showing him a lot, and there's got to be something going on with him.
I think that's Nick Fury's son, a son that he has with his Skrull wife.
What happens if you're half Skrull, half human?
I'm not sure. I don't know what that would mean for abilities, but I do think it would give Fury more insight on what's happening, like using him as like insight.
So this is like a secret son.
I think so.
That the rest of the Skrulls don't know about.
Except for Fury and his wife.
Because, they are showing him a lot, and I'm like, why? Like, he doesn't do anything except wear that stupid hat. Like, what's going on?
Yeah. What I did think was interesting, the reveal that Fury had a wife, like, it was like, oh, that's shocking, but I wasn't walking away like, that didn't make sense, because they also did that with Hawkeye in Age of Ultron.
Yeah, they have secret lives that we don't know about. Yeah.
I am interested as to why she chose to be a black woman.
Okay, I was going to talk about this. The race that the Skrulls choose, I know that it's not relevant within the story, within the narrative that they're telling us, but in reality, that would be very relevant. Because if you choose to be a black woman, like she chose, or like a black man, like Gravik chose, the way that you experience the human race is going to be very different than if you are Talos and you're a white man, or if you're like, you are just not going to have the same experience with other humans.
Yeah. Very similar to what you would experience if you showed your true self.
Yeah.
So I thought was very interesting as to why she chose that.
Yeah, I don't know.
It could just be one of those moments where we've talked about before how the writers just probably wanted that to be intentional, because hearing the lines from a black person is going to hit harder than someone else.
Yeah.
I know it's a bit of a pivot, but that conversation that Fury had with Talos in the car.
Yes, I have notes about that. It's like another example of the ways that the Skrulls parallel Black Americans, because what he's essentially saying is that Fury became who he is, and also S.H.I.E.L.D. became what it was because of the invisible labor of Skrulls, essentially. Like Shield would not have been as successful an organization at it as it was had it not been for this group of Skrulls who are spies that can't be matched because they can be anybody at any time. But they did that without any recognition at all and without getting what they were promised in return. And it's very much the same way as like Black people in America, in that like America does not become America without the labor of Black people.
Yes.
And we get nothing in return. That's immediately where my mind went during that conversation.
The conversation that Talos had with Gravik in the museum when they're sitting down.
Talos, he dreaming.
Yeah. Okay, but this is what I was thinking. It really feels like it feels like Marvel is setting the stage for mutants.
Yes, because it's giving Professor X and Magneto already.
Exactly.
Yes.
And it is setting not just the stage for the viewers, for the fans, but it's setting the social political stage of the people in their universe, in their society. Because once it becomes revealed of, oh, you have these Skrulls and you have these super Skrulls and they can change to whoever person that they want, that's something that we can't really control. Even Talos was like, you're about to give them a unified foe, a unified threat. You know what I mean? That's giving mutants and X-Men. And so I feel like we're going to start to see like terminology introduced. You know what I mean? So that when the X-Men are finally more prevalent in the universe, you're going to see people say, look how things went with the Skrulls. We can't go through that again. And now we need to be more proactive in the way that we control these beings that might be a threat to our existence. That I thought I'm like, yeah, I see what you're doing.
Yeah.
I see what you're doing.
It's the exact same dilemma, almost exactly.
Yes.
It's like almost the exact same problem.
Which makes me think that the ending for this one is going to have some tragedy, which will make humanity in the MCU react out of fear when it comes to things with the mutants.
There's virtually no way for this to go well.
Yeah.
There's no out. That's what makes it such a good concept, is that there's no good solution here, which is why when Talos was talking and he was like, they'll see the difference between you and us. Sir,
I don't think so, Bucko.
Pick up history, but
I don't think so. Like you could say that Gravik is radicalized, but like they literally he's spot on with how humans are. It's very spot on.
Yeah. I mean Talos was right when he said, he was like, humans are at their most formidable when they have a common enemy. That's true. Like you can look at various points in history when that was true, right? Like when people of varying nations were the world wars, essentially, right?
Hitler.
Like they were like, we got to take this situation out. We got to handle this. That's true. That's correct. But they're not going to differentiate. They're not going to differentiate. And him saying that, and also immediately after that conversation, his vibe with Fury is very different.
Yeah.
And it makes me wonder if eventually we will see Talos switch sides.
Because he's go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
I'm wondering if he's eventually going to see what I thought they were going to do is not true. They're not going to see the difference between Gravik's people and my people.
Yeah.
They're going to think all of us are a threat. And then I wonder if he will be like, maybe I was wrong about this. Because also they're showing like it's not like, it's kind of like what he said to Fury at the end was like, I'm not with Gravik because I'm with you, right?
Yeah.
Like his loyalty to Fury is what's tying him to him. But they're also showing how that is very fragile too. Because he's calling him out on how he's been used by him over and over and over and over again. And he's the one who is always having to put himself or his daughter or his people are the ones who are having to put themselves in danger every single time.
And it really shows, like, there have been a number of instances in the last 2 episodes where Fury hasn't really shown a lot of restraint or grace when it comes to the people that are working with Gravik in the way that Talos has. When they're in Russia and he's trying to intimidate him to get information out, Fury gets violent very quickly, and Talos kept trying to tell him, let me handle it. Like, this is one of my people. Like, let me be the one to do it. And Fury kind of ignores him and does it his way. And then it happened again in this episode with I don't remember what his position was, but the guy with Bob, essentially.
He was a general.
Yeah.
A commander.
Talos had to kept saying, like, he's like snatching the gun away from Fury, like, put it down, like, give it to me. Cause he's like, dude, I know in the end, like, he kind of loses his cool, but you're seeing the tension of, I feel like Fury's bias is kind of kicking in a little bit.
Yes, I think he views them as more expendable.
Yes,
I definitely think so. I don't think he views Skrulls as equal to humans in
no,
any capacity.
I don't think so at all, because you could
which
see
is also
it.
going to get very awkward with his wife.
You could see it in the way that he made up history in his head, that he was cleaning up the mess from Skrulls, and
When he
Talos
said
was like,
that,
"Are you kidding me?"
I was genuinely confused because I was like, "What mess? Like, genuinely, what mess have the Skrulls caused in the past decade?
Yeah,
up until now that you were aware of? They've done nothing. You
Couldn't
were
have
not
done
aware
anything.
of what they were doing until now. Like,
and like you mentioned, it will get interesting with his wife, because I'm starting to feel like his wife is noticing that you don't see us as equal, even though that you're married to one. That kind of dispels the whole notion of, like, how could I be racist? I have a black wife. If you're like, I love all Skrulls. I married one. And at the same time, you're being expendable to all of them for like 30 years.
Also, what she said to him when they were talking about his absence, which, have they told us what he was doing when he was gone in space?
They haven't explored that yet, no.
Okay, because
whatever, I don't remember what the entity is that's up there. It felt like he was trying to build it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, it was one thing when we didn't know he had a wife, but now that we know he had one, I'm like, that's wild.
And I thought it was going to be like a Hawkeye, where it's implied he still sees them often when he's like off the job.
No,
Fury's
he
like,
was gone.
I've been gone.
What she said to him when she was like, well, this was a very well written monologue that they gave her. Because the first when he's like, what, like who you became while I was gone. And the first thing she says, I became a widow the first time that he was, blipped. But then when he was gone again, she says, I became who I was before you. And they kind of alluded to this briefly when they first introduced us, but when they first show her to us in his house, she's in her Skrull form.
Yes.
And when he comes home, she changes into a human. And I'm wondering if while he was gone, when she says, I became who I was before I met you, if what happened was she became proud to be a Skrull. Like, if she became like, this is who I am and these are my people. And if she was like radicalized in his absence.
Yeah.
And maybe she cannot be her true full self
when she's with
when
him.
he's around.
That's real.
Yeah.
That is real.
Because she's not on his side.
Yeah. It's going to get messy.
It is going to get bad. It's going to get really bad. And there's no way for this to end. I wonder if he's going to die, Nick Fury, at the end.
I don't think so. There are some rumors that he's going to be in the Marvels. So, don't know. But we'll see.
Somebody going to die.
Well, Gravik's definitely dead. But,
I don't want him to.
I know.
I really like him.
He has such great screen presence.
He does.
When he was talking about the painting, I was like, yo, that's so true, because I immediately went back to like when I was like in, K through 12, and we're more like elementary, but like when you're in school and you're reading about like World War I and II in history, most of the paintings you see of like the presidents and the generals, the ones that are they capture a moment when they're like somewhere in the White House preparing for something, but he's like, that's not me. Like, I'm the one that's in the trenches. That's where real stuff gets done, And I thought that added more layer to who he was and what he represented. Like, he's not just like a mad dog. He's just he's a soldier,
Yeah.
you know?
It's like, I mean, I like when they depict that in war movies. Like they did that in All Quiet on the Western Front. When they showed like these people, you know, these higher ups trying to come together, trying to come to a truce and taking all this time and, you know, wasting time, and the whole time it's like literally every second that you guys waste in this little room is
Losing
more
lives.
and more people on the front lines dying.
Mm-hmm.
So it's, yeah, and it's the same
Yeah.
thing.
Good third episode for sure.
I feel like let me look at my nose.
What else you got? I think that kind of covers most of what I had.
Oh, nope, that was everything.
Nice. We switching over to Andor. I think I'm coming around to what your initial opinion was about this being the best Star Wars thing.
I listen. I never really got how you could disagree.
Well, I
It's
mean,
simple to me.
I still love the Jedi lore. All of that, I still think is one of the more fascinating things we've ever had granted to us in sci-fi. And so, you know, with things with like Empire Strikes Back, Revenge of the Sith, even a little bit with Rogue One. Well, this is what I'll say though. I think Andor is the most well-crafted and the best acting Star Wars content we've ever had.
Yes.
I'm not saying it's the best, you know, show. I'm not saying it's better than the movies, but it is the most intentionally well-crafted Star Wars media that we've gotten, I think ever.
I don't know how you could say that, and that to me sounds like it's the best.
Well, because I think I don't, and maybe I'm not using the right language, but I still think what the scale of what the prequels and the originals were able to accomplish, I don't know if I've always felt that with Andor. And that's not a good or bad thing. I'm just saying, like, it's just a difference.
What do you mean by the scale?
So when I think about Revenge of the Sith, watching Order 66 of like, oh, wait a minute, we're losing all of the Jedi, all of the clones just went evil, the Jedi Council has fallen, Anakin, who's supposed to be this chosen one of the prophecy, falls to the dark side, and they lose. That sense of there is so much happening outside of what we're seeing on the screen. There's just so much there.
See, it's interesting because my impression of that was always that they didn't do a good job of showing us the breadth of what was going on. I guess
felt specifically from like Jedi and Force usage, not necessarily the Empire.
No, I'm talking about what you're talking about.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I felt like they could have done more to land the impact of Order 66. Because frankly,
it's phenomenally written though.
It wasn't until I watched the cartoon.
Clone Wars, you're right.
Wait, what are we talking about? You're talking about Revenge of the Sith.
Yeah.
It wasn't until I watched Clone Wars that I was like, oh, this is what went down. Just watching Revenge of the Sith for me was a story about Anakin Skywalker turning evil. Period.
Oh, wow, we watched that completely different. That's so fascinating. But I get what you mean. It's more context added into it.
It's more context, and you like the thing is, it's like you don't really know that many Jedi in
the prequels.
Yeah,
you get quite a few,
but you don't know them.
No, but I mean that's just the beauty of a TV show. You get a chance to get more.
I mean, yeah, but I think it doesn't land as heavily because you're not as invested in them as a totality. The ones that you really care about are still alive for a while.
I mean, it's just Obi-Wan and Yoda.
Those are the one. That's what I'm saying. You like you don't care about the others.
You didn't care about Mace Windu?
I mean, I like Mace Windu.
Wow.
But like, I just think that there. Anyways, I'm sorry, but he died when he was fighting. What's his face?
Palpatine.
That scene cracks me up. I'm sorry, the doggone church shoes get me every time. Why? I need to talk to the costume designer of these movies. We need to decide on a century. We need to get it together. You can't throw in regular old hoodies and regular old shiny loafers with these.
I get it.
Okay,
yeah.
but anyways.
No, you're
it takes you out of the moment. I'm sorry.
Not for me, but I can see how it could for someone. Yeah.
Crack me up. Okay.
But either way,
let's go.
I think we both agree the quality of Andor is very refreshing for Star Wars.
Yes.
Yeah, because it finally feels like we're getting back to something that has a lot of soul and depth.
Mm-hmm.
That it's okay to enjoy Star Wars content that's fun, but sometimes I do want to feel something wrong. I'm walking away with a thought-provoking conviction,
mm-hmm.
And it's been a while since I've had that.
Yeah.
With Star Wars.
100%.
I guess I can start this time with a couple of things. One of the things that I guess the first thing that I thought was very interesting was how they continue to draw parallels with Andor's almost dual origin story.
Mm-hmm.
In both instances, the Empire takes his home away.
Mm-hmm.
And in both instances, an individual is introduced to his life that is willing to fight the Empire, and that changes the trajectory of where his life would have gone.
Mm-hmm.
And they show it. They kept going back and forth with him leaving with Luthen and him leaving with his mom.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that it was so profound to see, like, it's showing. This is what I'll say, because I think it kind of ties into something I was going to say later on. Andor is showing the different versions of what fighting for your freedom can look like.
Yes.
And the different ways. It's not always going to look like the exact same way, because what he's doing with Luthen is different from what his mom essentially did. What she did was a little bit more small scale. She had her speech. She'll never know, like, how that energize and mobilize that entire city. But even something with like what Andor is doing, like stealing that from the Empire, like that is an act of rebellion. It may not be on the large scale that some of these other people are doing, but it's still there. And that's why I found that conversation that they had in Luthen's ship very fascinating, because they're like trying to have this conversation of like, what I'm doing is more meaningful than what you're doing. But like, and it was like, okay, but what I'm doing, there's more survival. Anyway, yeah. So I thought that was very fascinating.
Yeah, I picked up on something similar. To me, what it was about was, I feel like the show, especially in this episode so far, it might happen again later, I can't remember. But in this episode, I was picking up a lot on they're juxtaposing individualism versus like community. And Andor starts out, his version of rebellion is his own survival. Like, to him, surviving under this oppressive regime is rebellion. So he's focused on his own individual survival. And the show is essentially, how do we get from this Andor, who is like, me living and surviving to see another day is the definition of rebellion against this empire, to the Andor that we get in Rogue One, who was like, I will give up my life for this cause, for other people. And that's the entire thing, right? So I feel like they were showing like multiple examples of that. So obviously you have Andor, who is like, at this point in the story, very individualistic. he's like, I'm here for me, myself, and I. And he cares about other people, obviously, but the repercussions of his choices that he makes to survive on his own have a lot of spillover into the lives of other people who he cares about. And I feel like that comes from his first origin story. Because what kind of happens with Marva at the beginning, I wrote this down, is Marva a white savior? Because...
No, okay, I thought about that, but I don't think so. I don't think so.
I don't know, because...
It was implied that the Empire was on their way to take out everyone there because she said they killed 2 of their officers. They're not going to let anyone live.
No, I know.
Yeah.
Here's what I'm thinking. She takes him against his will. She knocks him out. And she leaves, and that's the only thing that makes me a little bit iffy. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing that she did. Like, obviously she saved his life, and obviously he is grateful for it. But like his dad does tell her she's like, he has people here, like he has other people here, and her response to that is, yeah, people who just killed a Republic officer of the Republic, and she knocks him out and takes him. And doesn't really have any regard for the fact that like she's stripping him away from
his identity,
from his family, from his home, from everything without his permission. Consent. Like she just takes him. And then I feel like from that though, I feel like that is how you get this mentality, because before that, you can see as a child, he was like a part of this system that was very communal. They were not individualistic at all. It was very much like we take care of each other. She takes him away from that, and then he's on this path where he is like, it's about me, myself, and I.
You're right.
I gotta take care of me. I gotta survive. That's how right? And then that's how he ends up. That's how he gets to this place where now, once again, he's done things, he's made some decisions that have put him at risk, and in putting himself at risk, he's put his community at risk, because his community is not the way that he is. His community is like, we're willing to put ourselves on the line to protect you, even though we know, because they could have, everybody in there knew that they were there for Andor, and they could have all been like, he's over there, take him and go. Yeah. But instead of doing that, they stood in opposition to the Empire, and they protected him at their own cost, because they know now they're not going to leave us alone. Like we've said something, and we've made ourselves a threat to them, and now our way of life is compromised because we chose to protect Andor, and he's not protecting them. And I feel like it just and then they do it again, like they juxtapose it with the people in the Empire. I think the show did something very good for showing us the Empire and like the Imperial officers, because I feel like there's always this question when you have like these huge oppressive systems that it's like, how do you get everybody on board?
Yes.
Like, how do these things function? Because you need all of these, everyday regular people in order to keep things marching forward. And this show does a really good job of showing us that these people that are like in the lower or middle ranks of the Empire, it's not like they have this like strong loyalty to the cause of the Empire. They're in there for selfish ambition.
It's competition.
Yeah, it's their own ambition. It's you versus me. Like, they don't have any sense of community. Because that's the thing. If you were loyal to this cause, this overarching thing that you're all fighting for, then you wouldn't have that dynamic between people fighting for the same thing.
Yeah.
But that's not what it is. They're all just there for their own, for themselves, essentially, which is always why. And that's a lot of times that's the case with those types of belief systems. And that's why if you look at them so closely, they become kind of inconsistent, because it's all about like individualism and individual power. And there's no loyalty to any real belief system or values. There's nothing there. And so that's why you'll find people making concessions all the time. And like, that's why things don't make sense a lot of times when you look at them closely, because it's like, you guys don't actually believe in anything.
Yeah.
You're here for yourself, and there's different things for different people that are motivating them to do that. And they show that with those two characters.
This is why I have tried to process this internally and even have some empathy for women that are in spaces like that, because in a way, in a version, like there is a version of misogyny that they are experiencing, right? It's kind of alluded to that, like, yeah, her boss is essentially saying you're gonna have to be a little bit more perfect in order to succeed. But to succeed for what, though? You know what I mean? Like, you are experiencing misogyny to go up the ranks in a system that will perpetuate misogyny. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's hard for me to empathize with that kind of oppression, because you are within the structure, within the system that is perpetuating the problem that you're seeing on an individual level. I just don't have sympathy for it, which I didn't have sympathy for Shiv Roy, because I felt she was part of the problem there. I don't have sympathy for the officer in Andor, because it's like, yeah, you're definitely more intelligent than all of these other guys that are working for the Empire, but you're trying to be competitive in a structure that will make it harder for people exactly like you. I just, the sympathy there just doesn't, I can't fully quite get there, because that's not a relatable experience for like regular women in the workforce, you know?
Yeah. This is the problem with white women. No, seriously, because the problem is how you define freedom. And within whiteness and white supremacy, freedom is defined by power, and specifically power over other people. And so what you'll find a lot with white women experiencing sexism is that their solution is to grapple for whatever power they can get a hold of over other people, because to them, like, that's how you get freedom. And you sometimes find this with black men too.
Yes.
It's the same thing. It's like something about maleness and something about whiteness, how they've been defined and how they have been
as power.
Yeah, they're literally defined by their power over other people, power over women, power over black people, power over whoever. And so those people who inhabit either one or both of those identities, I feel like either have to do unlearning of what like freedom and liberation is, or they're going to end up defining it as power over other people, and then they align themselves with systems that will give them that in any capacity, even though it'll be limited by whatever identity marker they have that is marginalized.
This is why when I'll hear from a lot of black guy friends or black guy students, and every time when you hear them talk about like in their version what it means for liberation, it is always centered around economic wealth. This idea of, if I just get enough money for myself, then I don't have to experience this kind of suffering anymore. And when you really unpack that with them, it really comes down to they don't like feeling powerless. That is at the core of what their value system is. And it doesn't seem like, for many of the students that I've spoken with, their issue is not with the unethical systems that give people a lot of that hoarded wealth. The issue is they can't be a part of that. That's where it's really rooted in. And so, like, when you mentioned the unlearning, yeah, a lot of black guys got to go through that, because that's just what you're taught from such a very early age, you know?
And to be fair to them, I think some of that also comes from, I think for a lot of people, and even for myself, sometimes I have a hard time not believing that, but like those systems just feel inevitable. Like it feels like we're not going to be able to undo them. So the very least I can do is not be victimized by them for my entire life.
Yes.
Like I can at least fight that. We're taught to view that as a more likely goal than an undoing of everything. Even though, like, baby, you're not gonna be a millionaire. You're not.
Not everyone's gonna be Jay-Z, bro.
You're not
LeBron,
gonna do
or
it.
MJ.
I'm sorry.
Let it go.
The chances are slim.
Let it go.
But like we're literally socialized to view that as like you know, the whole bootstraps, you know, mentality
Yes.
of being in America. But yeah, to me that's what that whatever that officer, what she represents. And same thing with the other guy, the other officer. I think
I've got things to say about him.
yeah. I think he just really represents that, because they make it so clear in the show that he is lost. Like, he doesn't really have purpose. He doesn't really have identity. And I feel like you'll find, talking to a lot of white cis men, that they are in the same position right now, that as the entire world is undergoing all of this change and transformation, and people are finding value in, you know, these identities that in the past would have been like ostracized and marginalized, and people are now finding like community and identity in that. A lot of times white cis men are like, what do? I don't know what to do with that. And so they end up trying to find purpose and value in like participating in systems of oppression that make them feel good about themselves, that make them feel powerful.
That's what makes a lot of them like susceptible for fringe groups, because that can be a play. And they admit it in their recruitment tactics. They admit it that they look for the men that you're describing because they can fill that void with something that will not require them to be introspective, but would rather allow them to place the blame onto other people, and leaves them in a space where they can feel more comfortable in their conclusion of what the world looks like. I wasn't expecting to get that deep, but I fucking love that. So, but this kind of brought that room where all the officers with I don't remember what his name is, but he's fucking Qyburn in Game of Thrones, which I thought was just, I see you and you're very intimidating, but you're also that fucking weird ass maester that was trying things out.
Okay, now I know who you're talking
about. Yeah. great actor. But he says a line that really stuck with me. And I think one of the things that I feel like Andor does so well is that at least in the realm of Star Wars, Andor has portrayed what the problem of policing is at its core. When the boss is telling all of his subordinates, he says, we are, how did he phrase it?
Healthcare workers.
Yes, he says that they are healthcare workers. He says they treat sickness, right? He doesn't talk anything about proactively trying to reduce harm in other ways, proactively trying to find solutions so that there are not any sicknesses. He has simply accepted the reality of, we are only here to treat a sickness when it arrives at our doorstep, when the call comes in and we respond to it. There is no room for anything restorative to exist when you have set up your police force to only exist as something reactive, right? That's the first thing. The second thing is you hear this word a lot, and I remember David Simon talked a lot about this in interviews, and he explored this concept in The Wire as well. This phrase of good policing, and how it is virtually impossible for well-meaning individual officers to do anything good, because the system of policing just does not allow you to do anything relatively close to good police work. You have the war on drugs, and a lot of cops left because they're like, we are not solving anything. We're not healing, we're not restoring, we're not making things safe. What exactly is the goal here, right? Now, granted, you could encourage them to push a little bit further to explore something that could be a little bit more liberating for a lot of people of color, but they're on the path now, right? And I feel like even for this cop, he doesn't even understand that bro, you're not in the business of making the Empire a safer and more hospitable place for everyone. That's not your job. And it was like he couldn't understand why everyone around him was reacting the way that they were in response to the officers losing their life. It was like it was not compatible in his head. He couldn't understand the culture that he was trying to work within. And I feel like that summarizes the individual good cop mentality that we hear from a lot of people. I think for a lot of officers that go into that line of work, well-meaning, truly, but I don't know if all of them have fully grasped that the structure that you're trying to internally do good as an individual is not set up for you to do anything proactive that can be restorative.
I think the irony is that while all of that is true, a lot of policing is framed as being proactive. A lot of what they do, they say is being proactive. All of the hyper visibility in certain communities, the stop and frisk policies, all of that they say is being proactive. That's because that's what they think. That's what they think crime prevention looks like.
You're proactive to symptoms,
right?
Not the real disease.
This is my new take on policing since reading that book.
Let's hear it. And you've been liberated from that book.
I don't think policing has any role in preventing crime. I don't think that's their job at all. I don't think that they are built with the capabilities to do that. I think that lies completely outside of their skill set, and that the infrastructures and I think that the infrastructures and the organizations that need to be doing that are different and separate from them. I don't think cops have that ability because of their job description and just how they're designed. I don't think they can. Because they're essentially what the cops are is they are the inhabitors of the state monopoly on violence. Like they are the one group of people that we as society have agreed, and the state has agreed, like these are the people that have the ability to enact violence on other people in order to protect. That's like the framework, right? In reality, it looks a little different, but that's the framework. But that has nothing to do with crime prevention. Yeah. That's just a completely separate thing, right? We know various things are needed, and it's apart from that. I think the only purpose for cops is to solve crimes and hold people accountable for harming other people. I think that is it. That's it. And the irony is that that's the one part of police work that they don't do with fidelity, with consistency, and especially in marginalized communities. That's the one thing that they literally don't do. They do not solve crimes in Black communities. They don't do that.
Decades go on and people never know.
They don't. Mm-hmm. When somebody goes missing, when somebody is murdered, cops, when the victim is a Black person in a Black community, and admittedly, the likelihood is that the perpetrator was a Black person too. Cops do not solve those crimes, and they don't hold people accountable. There's no justice for those victims the vast majority of the time. So that's his speech about them being healthcare workers is a stretch. No. But that premise that that's the one job of law enforcement.
You're more like
I don't necessarily. Huh?
Like a mucinex or an allergy thing. You're not.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You're not healthcare workers.
But that's you're not. That's not the job of police. The job of police is not to cure. That's not what you do.
Yeah.
Your only job, I think, is to come in after things have already gone bad, because that's the only time when you need this state monopoly on violence to go into action is when somebody has been harmed, and the only way that we can stop that is with some sort of force.
Yes.
And those instances exist, right? That happens in reality. We know that.
Mm-hmm.
But that's like, they don't do it then. Like, they don't do their jobs. Like, we see that all the time with like mass shootings. And all, like, they don't, like, that's the one thing that they actually should be doing that they like don't do. And that's it. That's your only job, is you come in when things have reached a point when all these other things have failed. All of these other systems that we should have in place that we don't, have not worked, and we've gotten to a point where somebody has been harmed or somebody is in danger of being harmed, and we need somebody to come in and either prevent that from happening with force or to hold accountable the person who has done it. Yeah. And what accountability looks like, we can discuss, right? But what we know from science, from research, is that the harshness of your consequence is not what matters. It's the consistency and the predictability of the consequence. And even as teachers, we know this. Mm-hmm. I know that if my students know this XYZ is going to happen if this happens, that's what matters. It doesn't matter how harsh the punishment is. It matters that people know I will be held accountable according to these decided upon rules if this happens. But the second that people know that they won't be held accountable is when you have all this shit. Yeah. Sorry. I'm sorry.
No,
we went way off.
You don't need to apologize for sharing that information. I learned a lot in that moment. I know our listeners will. So nothing to apologize there. Nothing to apologize there. I mean, I think we kind of went through most of my notes, to be honest. You might have a little bit more, but I think that kind of covers. Oh, but we talked a little bit about the Empire. The part of, and we see it, oh my God. We're seeing it a lot lately, and I'll get to what I mean by that. When Andor's mom is sort of being held captive by the officers in that room, she's giving that little monologue of like, this is what a reckoning sounds like, right? When people learn that there are more of us than there are of them. That is how oppression and how a fascist state works, is that this empire, this entity, convinces its group of people that not only are they powerless, but they are in the minority, that there is no outlet for you to be successful. And you see that a lot with how Republicans have been acting in the last 4 to 5 years. There has just been this onslaught and this overwhelming experience of, we're going to do this, and then we're going to do this, and we're going to do this. And sometimes it does kind of feel like, am I by myself here? Are my values that much of being in the minority where we just don't have enough people who we can push back with? And I think that mentality only exists. It's only permeated amongst, people that are being disenfranchised and marginalized, because that's the culture that you need in order to keep people in line. And why I really appreciated her speech is that it is a parallel to what happens in the prison later on in the season.
Well, that's true.
They learn there's more of us than there are these officers. And so once they come to that realization, the fear of playing a role in maintaining this empire fades consistently. That even in Rise of Skywalker, controversial film for a lot of reasons, but Lando says to Poe, he says, but there are more of us. There are more of us. That is the consistent theme that you see throughout Star Wars. When Star Wars wants to critique the idea of oppression and fascism, the running theme is there's more of us.
And if we band together.
Yes. This idea of coalition building is the purest version of what Star Wars represents. And you see it in all of the different movies, the TV shows, all of it. And Andor has really shown us how it starts. You got to get fed up. You got to get to the point where like, I've had enough of this. And you look to the other people around you and say, they're experiencing the same thing I am, even if our stories are not identical. There's something there that I can band with you and say, this system's got to go, because it's impacting all of us negatively, even if it's not looking the same. And seeing when she made that speech, I was like, what? Why am I getting goosebumps? Like, what? Why is it landing so hard? And then I thought of the prison, and then I thought of, oh, this is just Star Wars. Like, it shows up everywhere. Every single medium of Star Wars content, you see that theme show its face every single time.
That's very good. I did not notice that.
This is like Star Wars. Yo, it's just
okay. I see you. Star Wars with the continuity.
Oh, it's so good.
The only thing I would add to that is that the one thing about that and how it looks in our reality is that everybody knows that there's more of us than there are of them. They've just been able to create systems that can function without a majority.
Electoral college.
Yeah.
Probably the easiest example to digest.
Yeah.
But not to, end it all gloomy.
Sorry.
There's hope. There is hope. You're seeing people push back.
Yeah.
I
did have one other thing.
Let's hear it.
It's about Tim, the boyfriend.
I felt a little bit sadder for him watching this than I did last week.
I think that the irony that the person who called the cops, they're not called cops, but whatever. The person who called the cops is the person who was shot by the cops.
Yeah.
And to me, it just is it really conveys the message. Let me just pull up my notes.
They're not gonna love you no matter how hard you try.
There we go. This just conveys the message that allying yourself with an oppressive power will not save you.
Nope.
And it will always come back to get you, or it will impact the people that you care about.
Mm-hmm.
And that's exactly what happened here. He calls the cops. He thinks they're just going to come and get Andor. My problem's going to be taken care of and my life is going to go on. And what happens? His entire community goes under siege and he loses his life trying to protect the woman he loves, who is being brutalized by the forces that he called in. And I feel like it just really goes to show this mentality of like, everybody's liberation is connected to everybody's liberation. And you sacrificing one person's, at some point, it's going to come back to you. Asian Americans, we need to talk, okay? Because this shit with affirmative action,
although
it's coming back.
Majority of Asian Americans do support it.
I know.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, they're being utilized.
Yes.
They're being utilized to push this agenda forward, and it's going to come back on y'all.
Mm-hmm. What did we learn just today? Now that affirmative action's gone, GOP is going after
all those scholarships,
minority scholarships. Yep. Do you not think that's going to impact you?
It's coming back for every. It's same thing. Black people, black religious folks, who can't get on board with the LGBT community. It's gonna come back around. It's you can't separate it. Mm-hmm. It's all connected, and it's very clear that this group of people, they're going after everything. They want to take it all. Okay, rich white men, they want to take it all. TERFs, women who call yourselves feminists but who don't support trans women, it's coming back. It's coming back. Okay, all of it's gonna come back on you at some point in time. It's all interconnected.
Yeah.
And you, everybody who's doing this, you're thinking that by allying yourself with these people, you're protecting yourself. No. All of us are going down. Okay, if all of us are gonna go, or none of us are gonna go.
It's not gonna stop. They don't have a threshold. It'll keep going.
As we've seen, I think people they think that they have a limit. No, they don't.
No. This is not something that we should have to learn the hard way when history has told us so.
They do not have a limit.
Yeah. Last thing I thought was so fun to pay attention to. So, as many of us know, like there is somewhat of like a Star Wars to Game of Thrones or Game of Thrones to Star Wars pipeline, right? So obviously the most common one would be Emilia Clarke that played Daenerys, and then she ends up playing. I'm drawing a blank with what her name is. What was her name in Han Solo?
I only watched the movie once.
Oh no. Anyways, people will naturally think like Emilia Clarke is probably like the main one, but there are actually tons of Game of Thrones.
Are they all British?
Yeah, well, I think most of them are. Yeah.
Actually, that's because everybody in Game of Thrones was British.
No, Peter Dinklage is not
British. Oh yeah.
So I looked up. There's actually a ton of other Game of Thrones actors that went on to be in Star Wars or were in Star Wars and then came on to Game of Thrones. So I'm going to read you a few, and then you might be surprised by a few of them. All right, so obviously the one that probably comes out the most, I don't remember what her name is, but she was in both. She shows up for the bank heists in Andor, and she was also that snotty girl who always kept trying to beat up Arya when she was trying to learn how to become like a many-faced girl.
Oh, okay. Wow, yeah, I did not remember that.
Grand Maester Pycelle. He also played a general in Empire Strikes Back. He's the old guy who was kind of faking out to being. This one might be a little bit harder. He was the maester for Stannis Baratheon in that first episode, and then he tries to drink the poison and give it to Melisandre. She doesn't die because she. He also played the governor of Naboo. Do you remember that replacement? Well, not really replacement, but Padme had all those other people in Phantom Menace that kind of dressed kind of like her. That was also one of the daughters in Game of Thrones, one of the Martell daughters.
Okay, but the one that was supposed to be her was
yes,
Keira Knightley, right?
Okay. Obviously, another common one, Brienne. She played the soldier in The Last Jedi.
Did we ever see her face?
Briefly, well, just portion of it. Bloodraven. Okay. He was in The Force Awakens. I'm trying to think of some other people that we might know. Syrio Forel, who first taught Arya how to fight in season 1. He was also like a bar patron, like you know, flew around and whatnot. So that's another one. I'm trying to think of some other ones that we might remember. Catelyn Stark's sister. She's a troubled woman. A troubled woman. She was also I think she was like a general, or she was a monitor in Star Wars. Some other people that I'm trying to think if you would remember. Sir Barristan Selmy, one of the soldiers that left the Lannisters to help out Daenerys. He was in Rogue One. And obviously her name, oh my gosh, what was her name? Kira. That's what her name was. And then obviously Oberyn Martell, another classic. But some other ones, the wife of Oberyn, she was also in Star Wars in Obi-Wan. And then this last one, the actor who played Qyburn, he's also in Andor. The list goes on and on and on. There's a ton of them. So that pipeline I thought was very fun to see, like, they must have some working relationship going on there. Maybe similar people are working in the production areas and they just bring on people who they're familiar with.
Sometimes I feel like British Hollywood is like Black Hollywood, and that it's just
Everybody
like
just know each other.
super small. So you just kind of see, because like
The
a bunch
same
of
ones.
people, like I'm sure if you were to cross-reference that with like Harry Potter, they'd be some stuff.
Oh,
like,
there's a lot. There's
yeah,
a lot
like,
of Game
I
of
just
Thrones
feel
in Harry
like
Potter and in Star Wars.
British actors are just like recycled. Like
That's the that's the trifecta right there of Harry Potter, Star Wars, Game of Thrones. You're just going to see everyone that continue to exist there. Also, there's this new show. There's this new animated show on Disney Plus that is written that it's like inspired from like Afrofuturism, and it's gotten like virtually no like marketing done. Yeah, I saw it pull it. Let me see if it'll show up on Disney Plus when we first log in.
it's stupid for them to do that, because that's exactly the type of thing that was that it.
Yes, this right here, Kizazimoto. I don't know why it hasn't gotten any.
Oh, it's anthology.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's not like a continuing story.
No, it's an anthology
still.
series that is clearly inspired from Afrofuturism, and it feels like it's gotten zero marketing. And I don't understand. Like this is how, like this is another version.
We need to watch it and review it.
I know, but like this is just another version of like how misinformation will spread. They will ignore factors of the idea like this has gotten zero marketing and then just say like people just don't want to watch this woke stuff. Right? You know it's coming. You know it'll show up. And I just feel like
Which is like so false, because 100% if this was getting attention, everybody
Black
would be
people
jumping on
are
this.
always going to support Black movies.
But-
like you've seen it.
Even other people, I think this would be wildly successful.
Yeah.
If it was, I mean, it just looks extremely cool.
Mhm.
Like the animation. Like I'm excited already. Now this is the first I've heard of it.
Yeah. All right, y'all. Thank you all for tuning in. We'll see you all next time.